Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with InsideTheU. Thanks for stopping by. Just got done watching Miami Hurricanes spring practice number 8. Only 7 more to go, and that includes the spring game on April 12th right in front of me here at Cobb Stadium. But today's practice, great to be back out here, and great seeing these guys in full pads. Only able to see 4 periods of practice, but part of those periods, I really tried to take advantage of the time being out here and watching the offensive line versus defensive line. And I'll show some videos from practice today as I'm showing you right here. And I certainly want to get into some of this because I know a lot of you like seeing these battles and it's great to see. But I want to start with running backs because I want to pay a lot of attention to the running backs, watching the drills. In particular, Mark Fletcher, got to see him. You know, Jordan Lyle, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, those are the guys I paid close attention to. And Mark, just good to see him, you know, kind of out here going through drills and watching him go through some different things. I haven't paid too close attention to Mark this spring, but today in particular, watching him go through the drills, and you can see right here. And I asked Coach Merritt after practice about these drills because he spoke to reporters, and look, I want to provide this a little bit of a note, but he said Mark Fletcher is, you know, trimmed down a little bit, kind of slimmed down a little bit, and he feels like he's a little bit more powerful running through tackles. So that's something to note. He said maybe the weight is about the same, but just feels like he's a little bit more trimmed down. But, you know, it feels like the power has improved as he's going into year 3. But in particular with this drill, and I was watching it and kind of wondering where this came from because I think it's a great drill. You know, watching them kind of go through, you see these guys all the time go low here and kind of work on their quickness. But then at the end, you see them get a pad thrown at them. And obviously that's not going to be something that happens in a game, but that's to help simulate a defender coming from who knows where. And I asked Coach Merritt about that and kind of where he gets his either creativity from with the drills or where he gets stuff like this. And he says basically he's just trying to watch the film, find things they need to work on, and then try to simulate that the best he can and with the drills. And this is one of those things that he particularly started with. He said 7 years ago he started doing this before he got to Miami. But, you know, because, you know, you can't bring a linebacker in or a safety in the drills, so this is the best way to do that. And as you can see, the running backs, you know, they didn't all take on, it wasn't just this easy drill. And just with the running game in general, you know, kind of looking back to last year, I think a lot of people might be surprised. Miami actually led the ACC in rushing yards per game. However, I do want to point out that it did drop to 6th in the conference when they played conference games, conference opponents. So that number could certainly be a little bit more improved. But on the flip side, in conference play, they led the conference in yards per carry. And I know the running backs coach, I'm sure, and Dawson certainly knows the importance of the run game. But just having that production, I think is so important for this offense. Obviously with the passing game, with Carson Beck, the things that they have going on the wide receiver and tight end position, which I'll get into here in a little bit. But I think the running game is so important. You lose Damian Martinez, you got Mark Fletcher back for year 3. You know, and Damian had that 1,000-yard season last year. Again, came on strong at the big bowl game performance there. Does this team have a 1,000-yard back on it? And at this point, I wouldn't say that they do because I think with Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle, I think both of those guys are going to get a lot of carries and kind of essentially split reps. It's the way I see it now. I think they are going to play a third back, but I think those two guys are going to be the main ball carriers. I just don't think there's going to be enough carries, you know, for one of them to get 1,000. But certainly I think they're capable of doing it. I just think with the workload, I think it's going to be divvied up, and I think that's what they want to go with. And I like that both of these guys provide different styles with the bigger back in Fletcher and then Lyle with his, you know, essentially his game-breaking ability. I think you're going to see that this year. And I think the running game is going to be so important early on in the season. Open up against Notre Dame. Carson Beck, regardless of, you know, how it goes for him with his recovery from his injury, it's going to be his first game. And playing a high-quality opponent like Notre Dame, I think maybe it's going to be one of these games where they just rely on the run game. A few games later, you got Florida, maybe similar situation. Now, they obviously want to pass the ball. I just think in this first month of the season, I think the run game is going to be certainly a huge point for this team to do well. So paying attention to the running backs, again, Gerard Pringle Jr., saw him make a little bit of a flash. I saw him during the spring a little bit. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey has added some weight. Coach said he came in at like 170, so he's actually added some weight since he's been here, over 200 pounds. So we'll see, you know, and he touched on Terrell Walden. But overall, I think he feels good with the running backs. I do want to leave you on this. He said in looking for running backs, obviously he wants production, but he's looking for tight quarter situations. He wants guys to be able to make moves in tight spaces, not just the guys that run free for big long gains at the high school level or even right now. he wants guys to be able to operate in space. And for me, I hear that and I just think back, because that's something that I always pay attention to and try to really, either evaluating or watching running backs at the high school level. Certainly that's something I'm always paying attention to, is what they're doing in between the tackles. So it's just interesting. Obviously, Coach Merritt has a lot of experience and understands what it takes. So I thought that was interesting. That's something to watch for with this team, and also how he kind of preaches, his drills or his mentality to these guys. Another thing that stood out to me with the running backs with what he said was he really likes guys that are ultra competitive. He wants guys to hate losing more than they love winning. And when you hear that phrase, you know exactly what he's talking about. He wants guys to be competitive in all the drills, going against defense, certainly in game situations, and all of that. But that's something he's really paying attention to. And just watching Coach Merritt coach through drills, he certainly has a lot of passion for the position, and it's all the drills. It's not just the running the ball. It's pass protection type drills, catching balls out of the backfield, which he does say that he does feel like they're a little bit more improved than they were a year ago at this point. And just watching a few other drills in practice that stood out to me from today's practice. One was watching the defensive ends drop back in coverage and try to intercept passes. Now, you see this with linebackers. They go through a drill where they try to intercept passes, obviously with the defensive backs, but just watching the defensive ends. And obviously some of them, as you can see, and as you will see, struggled in this drill a little bit, but it's just something that I think Coach Heatherman wants to see from the defense. I touched on linebackers trying to intercept passes. I think that's going to be important for him in his defense, but now you see some defensive ends, some versatility that I've talked about so much already with what I think he's going to expect from his defensive ends, and this just essentially highlights that. So that stood out to me. Another thing, and maybe it happened earlier in practice, but I saw Chris Ewald, a cornerback, a highly regarded cornerback coming out of high school, but I saw him working with the safeties today. So just that's, to me, noteworthy, because again, they've got a lot of guys competing at cornerback and then at safety as well. So good to see him out there regardless. I think he moves well. So we'll see if he's going to stay there. That's just something I noticed in today's practice with the drills. And then obviously another drill that I've really enjoyed to watch throughout spring practices is watching this offensive line go against the defensive line in these combo blocking drills, as you see right here. And it's great watching these guys when we're able to, but especially now that they're in full pads. And the way they break it up, as you can see, so they have three groups going right after another. You got the tackles on the far end going against some defensive ends, and you kind of got the center, the interior linemen there going against defensive tackles. And then obviously right in front of me, you've got this really good look at the tackles going against the edge guys. And every time, it's always good seeing Francis Maui-Noah go against Ruben Bain. But another guy that's standing out to me essentially a lot whenever these drills come up, it's freshman Hayden Lowe. Look, he was a highly regarded recruit that they got in this class, and it's showing up. I mean, he's making plays. He doesn't look like a freshman. I definitely think he's going to play a factor for this team this season. And if I were to guess, at this point, maybe going to be in a Justin Scott role in terms of playing time, maybe 5 to 10 snaps a game. But that just is because of the other guys that they have in front of them at defensive end. Obviously, Scott was a D tackle, but just I do see Hayden getting a role, even if it's a small role. I do see him playing this year, and I think consistently, not just against the teams where it's blowouts. I do think he can find himself in the rotation, because I think he can add to the defensive line based on some of the things that I've seen this spring. And just lastly, passing on a few notes from tight ends coach Cody Woodle, and talking about the tight end position in general. He had really high praise for Elijah Loft and really likes what he's bringing to the table from his versatility standpoint. A guy that can run the ball. I heard he had a long touchdown run the other day at practice, but also a guy that obviously can catch passes, whether he's lining up as a true tight end or even kind of lining up in the slot, and just he's a guy that they can move around, and they're excited about being able to do that with him. And Coach Woodle said, this thing that stood out to me was just that he says he's a very powerful guy, and he doesn't get tackled by the first ball carrier, the first tackler, and that stands out to him. And he said just a really unique player, and they have high hopes for him. And certainly they're looking for a lot of production from what they did last season with Elijah Arroyo leading the way there with all the catches he had there, 35, but they want to have a lot of production from that tight end spot. But Elijah Lofton, player to watch, And also too, because of his uniqueness, I asked Coach, is there players or that from the NFL that you're having him watch because he just has a unique skill set? And he said there were two guys. Obviously, Brevin Jordan was a guy that he mentioned. That certainly he's a guy from same high school, wearing number 9. Obviously, going here, a little bit of an undersized guy. So those similarities. But the other guy, Delaney Walker. So that was the other guy from the Titans, if you guys remember him. So I think those were the two guys that he mentioned. So I thought those were good comparisons. Overall, once again, great being back out here. Always enjoy being able to be out at practice, be able to watch things from my own eyes, kind of pick up on a few things here or there, and then obviously ask players or coaches some different things after practice, which is always great. Definitely drop in the comments below. Let me know some things you want to hear about, either guys you haven't heard about recently or questions you might have about this team. Looking forward to covering the next practice, but thanks for your support. Have a good rest of the day and take care.